Thank you for tuning in. I'm Diana Longry, host of Off the Record News. Off the Record News is brought to you live from the SPNN studios out of St. Paul. Now tonight we are going to continue our report on the St. Paul City Council and the Trask Consortium square-off. But before we do, we're also going to touch on another topic which is of very great interest to everybody who is a property owner in Ramsey County, and that has to do with your property taxes. Now recently there was a meeting in Maplewood at the Maplewood Library where people had an opportunity to tell their Ramsey County commissioners and the Ramsey County officials exactly how they felt about either items that were on the Ramsey County budget or how the Ramsey County taxes are going up. So I have with me this evening to help me with both news stories, Mr. Greg Copeland, who is a resident of St. Paul and who has been very active in watching these issues. Thank you, Mr. Copeland, for being here.
Great to be with you, Diana. It's always fun this time of the year. You know, everybody's out talking about what they're going to have tomorrow for Thanksgiving. We're planning on Christmas, but the county commissioners, the school board members, and of course our city council members can't wait to have Christmas at your expense. And that means your taxes are going up, folks. There was a great story in the Pioneer Press. I got to give him credit. Last Sunday, Fred Mello. He itemized the tax bill from the 1400 block of Charles, and I don't know if Fred lives there or not, but I'm guessing he might. And if you add up all the numbers that were in this story of his, the taxes on that property are going up $487 and change. And there were a couple items where he didn't actually come up with a dollar amount. And you know, now the property did go up $30,000 in value for a appraised price of $223,000. But the idea that the government is saying Merry Christmas with a $500 tax increase to this property owner, and if it's you, Fred, I hope your boss is reading your copy and going to give you a little bit of a raise, because that's a heck of a bite, it seems to me.
Well, or maybe what they can do is that they can just increase the rates for the legal notices section that the cities pay for all the legal notices that they have to provide. Well, but you see, the issue that you're bringing up here, it really is focusing on a moderately priced home. For many people, a $230,000 home is moderately priced. And so let's say before the $30,000 increase, it was $200,000. That was even more moderately priced. And folks who have been watching this news program know that a couple of months ago, we already provided this type of information, is that the most moderately priced homes in the Ramsey County area are the ones that are being hit the hardest. The folks who generally are in the modest homes are the folks who make the least amount. That's one of the reasons why they're in modest homes, because that's what they can afford, and that's what the banks allow them to buy. I mean, that's, you know, when you go through that cost-benefit analysis of buying a home, right, they take a look at what your debt-to-income ratio is, and if your income is not all that great, tremendous, well, then it has a bearing upon what you can buy. Exactly. And that dream of owning the American home has not died, and it doesn't mean that because we have millennials now, that millennials don't want to buy homes. They want to buy homes, but they can't because they got all the student loan debt, so their debt-to-income ratio prohibits them from buying these moderate homes that now the Ramsey County is basically taxing people out of.
Yeah, and those millennials are facing that moving target. Every time they think they've saved enough, well, there we go and add another 30, 40, 50 grand or whatever it is, because actually those prices on an appraisal are well below typically what the market actually is. And I could easily see in the area where this house was maybe even another $70 or $80 or $100,000 in a tight real estate market like we have right now. So frankly, we're not doing anything with the tax policies of this state and in this county, in this city, and the school board to make St. Paul a more affordable place. In fact, we're going in exactly the opposite direction.
And for our viewers out there who may say, well, that's just you guys thinking that it's the moderately priced homes that are being hardest hit, well, we went back into our archives and we have it straight from the horse's mouth. Ramsey County.
There you go.
So let's pull up our first clip that we pulled out of our archives that kind of sets the stage so you understand the different ranges of pricing values of properties in Ramsey County.
So if you stratify that 1.84 billion residential recovery, and really take a look at it by municipality and planning districts, you can see in the red areas, North End, Payne-Phalen, Dayton's Bluff need double-digit increases to fully recover from that 2007 high point. Many of these areas in red are located in areas of concentrated poverty with over 50% people of color. Many of these areas in red have seen double-digit increases in value for a number of years. These are the areas that saw values go down the most during the recession and are increasing the most now, but they still have not caught up. Reasons for these increases is just recovery from the recession, the demand for good housing stock. St. Paul is one of the few major cities in the metro with median values under 200,000, so more people can afford to buy homes in St. Paul. Many of these property owners are actually relieved to see their values come back. Gaining equity in their property, it's their nest egg for retirement, but they're very, very concerned about the increase in taxes. Looking at current sales, I do anticipate that these areas in red will increase next year as well, and maybe fully recover from that 2007 high point. So while the increases in property value is great, it's a great opportunity for property owners from the standpoint of equity, it comes with the stress of property tax increases.
So as we heard, those properties that are in the areas of highest poverty during the Depression, which was only 10 years ago, by the way, they went down the greatest, and now today their increases are going up the greatest, and he said that they can look forward to great increases again next year. And it almost sounds like they want to equalize the values of the property throughout all of Ramsey County, no matter where it is that property is located. It almost sounds that way. And he makes it sound like somehow or other this is actually tied to what the market is doing. But I want to give you a good example. My little farmhouse in Maplewood, previously to this year, the property value I was being taxed on was about $119,000. Now that is a reasonably priced home. It also is a little farm home, and it could use a little work because, well, it's just a one-bedroom place, and it would be nice to have some insulation rather than the paper stuff that's in the walls that is it was originally built, right? So you see, it is modest and all. But when Ramsey County issued their new property tax evaluation, they said that this home was worth $150,000. Well, of course, I being a lawyer and knowing that this home is not, I could never sell it on the market for $150,000, I objected within that time period that you need to object. They came out. They wanted to take pictures inside. I said, no, you don't need to take pictures. You just walk through and you'll figure it out. It's a little old farmhouse that isn't worth much. And so then he looks around and whatever. Then he says to me, he says, so what would you like it to be? Okay, so now we're negotiating. Now it's no longer about the market. Now it's about what can you negotiate with the county. I said, I'd like it to be the same as it was last year, that $117,000 or $119,000. That's what I'd like it to be. He says, oh, what about $121,000? I said, that sounds good. I'll take $121,000. So you see, is it based on the market, or is it simply based on they've got this concept that they want to equalize the values throughout the entire county, and it has really only a small connection to what the market bears. I don't know, I haven't done the analysis, but I can tell you from my own experience, it makes me think that it isn't always the market value.
Well, the system, and I'm talking about the property tax system, is so weighted against any restraint, whether it's value issues or whether it's the raising of your taxes. Because, we have the first thing in Fred's story Sunday was all about the various rebates that you can collect. If your taxes go up over 12% and the increase is more than $100, well, that gets you a special set of money coming at you from the state of Minnesota. And then, of course, there's the general rebate on your homestead that you can file for. But, honestly, these amounts of money that the state makes available give no incentive to restrain spending. And at the end of the day, if the county or the city or the school board or the Met Council, we don't want to leave them out, or any of these other agencies are spending more of your money, your taxes are going up eventually, because there's no way around it. It's a closed system. And, if they don't get you, they're going to get that apartment across the street. Or when the retail values hit bottom like they're doing now, I mean, Maplewood with the empty Sears store, for example. Sears used to be one of the largest properties in terms of value in the city. With that off the books, somebody's got to make that up. And you know who it is because you got your bill.
Well, now let's take a look at another clip from our archives that talks a little bit more about this tax shift. Now, doesn't that make it sound so clean and sweet and antiseptic? It's a tax shift. But let's take a look.
Those areas that are seeing the largest increases, Thomasdale, Frogtown, Dayton's Bluff, Payne Phelan, North End, West 7th, Maplewood, Mounds View, North St. Paul, and Spring Lake Park are all those areas that we're seeing higher increases in market value. So those are areas that are likely to then see much larger increases in property taxes, primarily due to the tax shifts. I want you to remember these areas as we go forward to the chart on planning districts, because essentially what we're going to be looking at here is that these are also the areas that have the lowest median value. So the largest increases typically are happening in those areas where we have the lowest median values, and that has implications.
Yeah,
Now, that's an understatement. This policy has implications. Wow.
Yeah, and the implication is when they increase the value on your home and they increase the spending, at all three levels of government, plus whatever the Met Council and the Capital Watershed District and the HRA in St. Paul and all the other things that are on your tax bill, when all that combines together, guess what? It's a bad day, and it's Merry Christmas if you're sitting down at the government office, but if you're you mentioned, or rather Mr. O'Connor, who was speaking in the first clip, the county administrator, when he talks about, retirement, people who are retiring, they aren't begging the county to come and increase their property values because they got less money. And if you're increasing the value and you're increasing the spending, guess what? We're going to get a bigger bill when we have less money coming in the door.
Well,
so it makes no sense.
And I have a number of clients who are seniors where they're in a particular predicament where they are still in their own home, but their spouse, because of medical issues or whatever, are actually in a care facility. So every year they have to fill out these forms so that way their spouse can utilize MA to be able to stay in the care facility, and so that the community spouse can then stay in the home. And there's always this balance between, we have to remember when we're filling out these forms to add into the budget of the community spouse the increase in property taxes and fees, because oftentimes they forget to, when they're filling out their forms, that is an increase that they have to put into their budget So when they're calculating how much of the household revenue that comes in, how much goes to the community spouse, how much goes to the spouse that's in the care facility, if you don't include that in there, you can find that the community spouse then doesn't have enough to live on because you forgot to build that in there. Of course, Ramsey County will ask you to confirm that those increases occurred. So after they've occurred, you do have to provide documentation to the county that their fees and taxes have increased, as if they didn't know.
Yeah, of course they know. And you know, what we have is so often with seniors in that situation, or people that are disabled or blind, or just 65 plus, there's a double standard with regard to medical assistance. I mean, you've probably all seen the ads on television. Call, MNsure to get your subsidized health care. Okay? The only thing that MNsure asks you about are what? The income that you're earning to qualify for that. But if you're over 65, blind or disabled, guess what they want to know? Not only what your income is, but they want to know what your assets are. So as you're trying to make it to the end of your time on this earth with something, of your own, some little bit of savings to pay for the roof on your home or to meet some other need that you might have as you're trying to stay in your home, as the county and the state and the governor and everybody says, oh, we want to protect seniors in their homes. Well, but what do they want to do? They want you to spend down all your money that you might have saved, no matter how small it is. When you start looking at the reality of these things, the double standard is amazing.
And you bring up that issue about, and of course we got to move on to our other topic here soon. But you do bring up a good topic about that spend down. Perhaps that spend down cap is not what it should be, because they do have that amount that you have to spend down to in order to qualify, and it almost seems like the public policy is to try to get you to sell off stuff so that way you're impoverished. And like you said, if you own your home, you do need to have some kind of money in reserve someplace in case you do need to repair that roof, because a roof does cost more than $3,000.
It sure does.
To put on. So you see, so there is this kind of, like you said, double standard.
Well, and there's a couple of things. I know you want to move on here, but the double standard here is really something that the legislature needs to give some attention to, because if we say, and I've seen this in multiple promotions from the AARP, for example, right? We want to keep seniors out of poverty, or there's a politician making a claim, we do all these things to keep our seniors out of poverty. Well, no, they don't. They're doing some things right now. In fact, the only classes of citizens who are looked at with regard to asset levels on these public programs are 65 and over, blind and disabled. And if you don't believe me, go to House Research. They've got a little sheet that'll show you that, or you can go on the website for Human Services. They still have one. I know they're having a lot of problems, but you can see the only class that where they look at asset is when you get to 65, you're blind or disabled. That's ridiculous. Now there's one little thing you can do, and for somebody that's in a really tough spot, is that we do have a senior deferral on property taxes, which essentially, you get a loan from the state and you're paying it back when you're gone, or your estate is paying it back.
But with that, though, interest does accrue, though.
Oh,
as
absolutely.
well.
That's what I'm saying.
So
It's a loan, so it has interest.
Yeah, so you really have to look at the fine print.
Yeah. You can stay in your house until the tax bill is so large that you've exhausted the capacity of your equity to maintain the loan. And there's a lot of other conditions, but that is something that's available. And frankly, we're sending the wrong message. If you're trying to create dignity in being a senior, what's the quickest way to rip it apart? Is to say, well, you know what? All of a sudden you're rich. when you know you're not. So there you go.
Right, when you're choosing between how you're going to spend that last
Yeah.
$20 you have for the month, is it your prescription, the food, or what are you going to do with that 20 bucks? Well, now we're going to switch over to the topic that we're going to use the rest of the program for, and that is the topic that we started last week, which is the St. Paul City Council's big discussion with the legal counsel of the Trash Consortium. Now, keep in mind, St. Paul City Council and the Trash Consortium are supposed to be working on the same side. They both are working towards, single hauler trash collection in St. Paul.
They're partners, aren't they?
Yes, they're partners, and yet when you listen to what is going on at the city council meeting, you can see that there is indeed a little disagreement between these partners. Now, I understand that there may be some resolution of this issue that has occurred since our last program. However, it still is of interest and value to listen to more of our film footage from the council meeting early in November 6th, I think it was, because it shows you the interaction between the partners. It also shows you the discussions about a contract that may have some ambiguity in it. And so even if you, let's say you don't live in St. Paul and you're thinking, why does this matter to me? Well, it might matter because you see single hauler trash collection could be coming to your community. Then you will be fully educated about what to expect because you have found out what happened in St. Paul, and you know it just hops around from community to community to community to community, sort of like the flu in the winter. You know, one person gets it, everybody else eventually gets it, and there's going to be one or two holdouts, but in the end, almost everybody gets the flu. So you see, single hauler trash collection is much the same way. So Mr. Copeland.
Yeah, on this too, and you mentioned the date, November 6th. That happened to be exactly the day after the city council election. Now, you may remember that there was some talk about a reduction in the cost of service during the campaign by the incumbents in particular, who all, by the way, got elected again. I think except for the president of the council, everybody who was in got in by 60 plus points. So people were buying that sale, right? The idea that they're going to have a tax rate reduction because if you vote yes, well, then all that tax is going away and the bill will come to you and it'll be less because we're going to give you a lower bill. Well, the other thing that those politicians were saying is that we're going to change a few things with the program. I noticed that we got the dollar reduction, but none of the changes are even on the radar anywhere. The idea of sharing a card, for example, stuff that the politicians, everybody said they were in favor of that during the election. Everybody. I don't remember anybody saying, whether they were a challenger or whether they were an incumbent. So, we got the dollar, but, we're still paying all the way on this thing. And frankly, the other thing we should have mentioned, Diana, too, if you get your pencil out, viewers, on Wednesday is your chance to participate. They're having a public hearing down at City Hall, and it's going to be all about how much they're charging on those taxes. And of course, in St. Paul, like we just were talking about, are they going to take off the garbage fees? Well, I presume they will. But then they're going to add in the mayor's new public safety dollars between 3 million and 1.7, depending on who you're reading. And that's going to be another increase after the notice went out. But they can do that because they got a $27 million cushion that they created for themselves. And if you really want to get into this, they're having a meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday in room 330 at the City Hall of their budget committee.
And this is Wednesday, December
4th.
Okay.
Let me make sure that's correct here. We got several notices here. Yeah, December 4th, Wednesday, December 4th, and the meeting in the morning is at 10 o'clock. That's the one where you get to listen to their discussion about the budget. Then at 6 o'clock, they're having their truth and taxation hearing where you get to speak to them, and presumably they will be listening.
And in the meantime, of course, when you show up at the 6 o'clock to talk about something, they'll say, well, we talked about that at 10 o'clock. Why weren't you there?
No, they kind of like those little committee meetings because the committee meeting is not in the chamber in the morning. It's in a little room off to the side, room 330, where they have the legislative hearings, and there's no TV cameras. I don't know why they don't have all their meetings in front of TV cameras. That was something I was pushing. I think public business ought to be done in public, and you shouldn't have to, buy a parking space or take the bus to get down to City Hall to see what's going on. That's the marvel of digital communications, right?
Yeah, for sure. Now, last week, of course, we had quite a few film clips from the November 6th meeting, and we're going to start off with clip number 19, which is the last clip that we ended up with last week. So we have a little overlap. This is where the attorney for the tax consortium is telling the city council that the last time he looked that there was no amendment to their agreement, even though it appears that the city has not always been abiding by the agreement. Let's take a look at clip number 19.
It says in the contract that the parties have to agree to amend the contract. I can find no documentation that's been executed by the city or executed by the haulers that shows the contract's been amended, yet the rates being charged the residents are not what's in the contract. And I would challenge anybody from the city who would like to show me how that rate was calculated based on the terms of the contract, the rates that are currently being charged to residents.
And part of this issue is coming about because the city of St. Paul is now saying that they are going to set the rates according to this formula that's in the contract. The consortium is saying that in order to make ends meet, they need to charge a different rate, which is higher. And the city council is saying, well, we're going only by the formula. And the lawyer for the trash consortium is saying, yeah, but when you set the rates for the first year, you didn't use that formula. And because you didn't use the formula for the first year, that means that you're saying that you're going to go only by the formula now is sort of disingenuous.
And there are two additional factors that are at play here. Ramsey County had given a discounted rate to the haulers if they brought their material, your trash, to the Newport facility where it's separated and it's turned into this fluff that burns in an Excel plant. Now, they were being charged $69 a ton. Now, Ramsey County says, well, we're going to eliminate the discount, and we are going to charge $82 a ton, and then they're going to charge a little bit more even next year. Next year meaning 2021. So there's 2 years of increases, and of course the consortium says, well, gosh, we didn't know anything about that. And so you've got a lot of moving parts here that all have to do with a lot of money because Ramsey County and Washington County operate this facility together. And there's in excess of $4 million that is not going to be going toward that discount. I noticed, though, if they're increasing the rates, that $4 million, where's that going?
Right.
I mean, that $4 million still exists. They took it out. They're raising the rates. They're pulling in a lot of new cash, folks. So where's the old money going and the new money? And the only thing they said, well, they're going to have more efficient services. What does that sound like, huh? Good God.
It sounds to me like one of those shell games. You go to the carnival and the guy says, which shell do you want? And then they move them around and you never can figure out which shell it is. Much the same.
You wonder if there's some collusion going on here because we've got all these partners, right, that are in this game. We've got Ramsey County with Washington, with the big facility that they're expanding. They want the governor to give them $21 million to expand it even more. I mean, the things that are going on here, and just wait, The plan is you're going to get free trash bags to put your organics in. Remember the word free. That's them, not me, saying that. So
Right.
you know how much free costs? A lot.
Well, let's move on then to clip number 20, where we'll start now with new film footage. This is from that meeting of November 6th, where the attorney for the Trash Consortium continues with his talking points.
Because I know it was not. So that's my first point.
Ms. Naker. Thank you. So are you saying that that the Haulers Consortium has had a problem with the rates that have been being charged all this time because they aren't the rates in the contract, but now is when this objection is being registered? I mean, it seems like something that would have come up earlier.
No, I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. Councilwoman Prince and others have stated that there is some kind of formula in the contract for adjusting rates, and I would argue with you there no longer is such a formula. The parties have amended the contract by their performance. There is no formula. And you can consult legal counsel about that, but the case law in Minnesota is pretty strong on that.
So he's pointing to the city council's, the city of St. Paul's performance. How have they performed over the past year? That is an indication of how they are enforcing the contract or what terms that they are abiding by. And it's not uncommon in a contract to have a clause in there that says if the parties for some reason have a different performance other than what the terms are, that does not negate the rest of the contract. So just because maybe somebody is performing differently doesn't mean the whole contract is ready to be thrown out. It probably isn't. But his point is that if you didn't have to abide by the contract in how you set the rates for the first year, why are you saying that you have to hold us to sticking to this formula in the second year when you didn't do that in the first year? And that's really the bone of contention between them. Now let's continue with our next clip.
So this is the first year of the contract. Has the formula been applied before?
Not when the rates were changed before.
When?
Whenever the contract was signed.
What's the date that the rate was changed?
The first bills went out
So you
in
believe
October of 2018.
and you believe the rate was changed?
I know the rate was changed. Look at the contract and look what's on the county's website or the city's website.
Well, there's documentation. If you have one set of numbers one place and a different set of numbers somewhere else, and then you look at the bill and see which one it matches, I guess you pretty much can see what the performance is.
Wow. What kills me is that, the council's, pretending here, I think, that they didn't know that there was this situation. Certainly the administrator of the program knows what was on the website. He was at those legislative hearings defending those specific rates. He was engaging and his staff was engaging in adjustments to complaints from the public about the bills that they got. So obviously there was a rate structure that was assumed to be in place not only by the administrator of the program and his staff, but by the legislative officer who does all these hearings, who takes her report to the city council, and they generally just bless it and move on. And if you haven't paid your bill, you're going to be assessed on your tax bill for those charges. So it opens up quite a Pandora's box, to hear the hauler and his 7 partners having this dispute.
Right. Well, let's continue with our next clip.
So you're saying that at that time that the contract was amended and therefore it's different now? Was it just that portion of the contract or the whole contract was amended?
I don't know the contract was ever amended.
Well, you just told us the contract was amended based on state law and based
the
on
process
performance.
that was undertaken by the city was not consistent with what the contract says. The process.
No,
I'm not
you
talking about
were,
the
no.
contract. No.
You were asserting things.
We're not talking over each other here, so if you'll just listen, Mr. Tolbert,
Yeah,
to speak.
you were asserting things. Clarify that.
Well, you know, you can always tell when you got a bunch of lawyers in the room. A number of the city council members are lawyers, and of course, the Trash Consortium has their lawyer, and everybody's an advocate and everyone's defending. So there you go. But it is fascinating to hear this in a open meeting, because generally speaking, these types of discussions and disputes are kept in the back room so that the public doesn't actually see the disputes going on, because they want to make sure that you believe that everything is hunky-dory and the waters are smooth.
But again, Diana, I just have to relish your great memory that it was November 6th, the day after the election. And you notice what in good spirits all the incumbents are in, just chopping at the bit to get involved in city business with this gentleman who represents their partners, who told the Pioneer Press, in particular the Highland people, we have no economic incentive to adjust the contract. Really? You know, this is, you couldn't make this up if you were, what's that guy who writes those fictional novels from Maine, the horror stories?
Oh, Stephen King.
That guy, yeah, because this is kind of a horror story because, you know, after this group, and I say all these people because the haulers put a lot of money in that yes vote.
You know,
column. And then you got all these incumbents that were only too happy to say this is all wonderful, and we're going to cut your cost, and we're going to give you that, or we're going to work on giving you that shared cart and a few other changes, because we know that we didn't get it right, and we made a few mistakes. Well, and here they give you $1, and they walk away thinking that's okay. That was the next day, I think, after this particular meeting.
And here is something I'm thinking of. You mentioned about the new Stephen King novel, okay? No, there really isn't one. Okay? But if there was going to be one based out of a city hall someplace, it would be the Gremlins of City Hall, right?
Oh,
Maybe?
Boy. Oh, boy. And you're not piggybacking on those Gremlins up in White Bear Lake with the lead issues, right?
No, let's hope not.
Okay.
Well, let's continue.
The process for changing the contract that was agreed to in the contract was not followed by the city.
So how does that affect the formula?
Why do we have to follow the process now? Why can the city pick and choose when to follow the process?
The point that I brought up before, why and how can the city decide to pick and choose what parts of the contract they want to follow and what parts they don't want to follow? That's not generally the way that good partners work together when they're contracting.
And remember, we are, in the beginning of the first quarter, if you will, of year number 2.
It's still supposed to be the honeymoon, right?
There you go, Diana. And it's a 5-year contract. That's another thing that kind of got left out of a lot of those discussions about how we're going to change things. Just wait 60 months, and everything's going to be fine.
Well, so we're in the honeymoon stage now, and we're already fighting.
Yeah.
Imagine what it's going to be like during the middle part of the marriage, and then near the end, closer to the 60th month, well, maybe there'll be the divorce. So you see what I'm saying? Okay, no, I do way too much family law. It just seems like a parallel. Well, let's continue with our next clip.
All right, no, I don't have any more questions.
And I think and right now, we're setting the rates in an ordinance as opposed to in the contract, so this makes sense to me. Ms. Nelson?
So, yeah, I'm having a hard time following, because my understanding is there's these 4 factors we've heard. Non-fuel portion, 1 up 2% based on the CPI. Fuel portion, unchanged, price of fuel same per the U.S. Department of Energy. County tipping fee up, now 82 per ton, was 69. So the factor that is changeable is the total tonnage material collected. And if we're talking about setting rates, what I'm looking for is argumentation from you on the factor that is changeable and how that leads to your objection. Because all I hear right now is like a strange relitigation of things outside of the context for negotiating them. And it is hard for me to connect that to these factors and why that implicates our rates. Do you see what I'm saying? So on those factors, what is the basis? Is it the tonnage, material, and your disagreement? Because I worry that we're in this discussion where it says we're negotiating, but I actually think we're just trying to agree on the facts that are in the formula, and that's different than a negotiation. So it's hard for me to understand where the back and forth is and to even characterize it as a negotiation, because we're just trying to come up to the same set of facts.
Well, now, that did try to lay out the issues a little more clearly. Initially, just saying that we are just setting the rates by ordinance and that's all we're doing here today, that really kind of brushes it underneath the carpet. But Councilmember Nelson, she was a little bit more specific in that, okay, what I want to hear is I want to hear argument on those factors that are the changeable factors, but still that doesn't get to his ultimate point and question he has is how was the city able not to follow that formula for the first year, and now they are holding the trash consortium to sticking to that formula the second year?
Well, and Ms. Nelson did a good job of coming up with her list of factors and the degree to which there was a change. The one thing I didn't hear her mention was the $20 plus a ton change on the cost at Newport, where the Ramsey Washington facility is. You know, yeah, sure, the tonnage went down, but if the rate's going up, you know, I mean, you're by the amount that we're talking about here, and Ramsey County's still holding on to that $4 million that they used to pay. It was actually more than $4 million, it was almost $5 million that they used to put into a subsidy. You know, I think we got a lot more questions. And where the hell is Ramsey County? Why aren't they joining this little discussion?
Right. Well, they certainly do seem like they are a major player in determining what some of those factors might be.
Yeah, and I think the county in their documentation admits that it's over a third of the cost of the whole package. You know, when you get past the fuel, you get past the investment that the haulers have, you get past their administrative deal. I still can't get past the fact that our city is sending us a bill for $24.60 on our taxes because they need to administer the cost of the system. So, you know, this little discussion we're having, $24.60 for every homeowner out there.
For administrative costs,
It's
to run the program.
It's an assessment on the tax bill to run the program. This was something that didn't exist until this year, on this year's, now, if you haven't paid them, they're past due, folks, taxes. And they're, you know, they're going to be on your 2020. Look at your proposed tax statement. It's right there. And they advertised, we're not raising it. Isn't that nice of them?
Well, let's continue with the discussion.
So I could boil down my question to just, what is the source of your dispute on these factors that would lead to different rates? Like, what is the actual difference? Not all the things about how you feel the city has interacted, but what is the source of the dispute?
So I will tell you this, and we have been through this with city staff. The city staff has attempted to break down the pricing of this contract into 4 different components. We agree completely on 3 of them. The one that we disagree on is disposal and disposal pricing. And the disagreement we have is that Ramsey County is raising disposal prices by 20%, and for some reason the city thinks the disposal pricing should go down.
Just as we were saying, Ramsey County disposal prices are going up, and yet the city of St. Paul seems to think that these prices should go down, but that is not the reality of the market created by Ramsey County. So let's continue with the discussion.
Thank you. I'm seeing staff shaking their heads in consternation, so I'm just wondering if you perhaps unintentionally are mischaracterizing the city's position, and if we could get some clarity on that. Mr. Tolbert?
I think we should let him finish his testimony, and then we can talk to staff, would be my suggestion.
That's good.
I would look forward to that.
Well, one good thing about that position is that then the time of the trash consortium, because they are on a clock, by the way, they're amount of time that they're using is being monitored, so they only have so much time to talk. So this way, at least, they can keep their train of thought, get their argument out there, and then the city council can always then turn to staff after the fact, rather than breaking the momentum of the consortium's argument as they're trying to get their point across while they're under the gun of the time clock. Now, isn't that wonderful to have your partner there before you, and you've got them on a timer telling them, well, while you're our partner and you're in contract with us, we're going to stick you on a timer just like any old common Joe who's coming in here from the community like we do to them. Wow.
That's exactly what they're doing. I was shocked when President Brent Moen actually said that to the man. Now, we're monitoring your time, so we're only charging off the time that you're actually speaking, so we're not charging you for the questions that we're asking. You know, I don't know that they do that with the citizens, though. So he might have got a little break there since he's in contract with the council. But as you keep pointing out,
so that's the partnership perk, in other words.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, to have this topic coming up at the council without it being resolved, I mean, this is ridiculous.
Well,
Except that there was an election. See, that's the part that explains the whole thing.
Well, the fact that this whole discussion is being had in this format is an indication to me that there was an absolute stalemate in the back room.
Yeah.
And that this is just one step short of the next stop, which is the courthouse. So let's continue with our film footage.
Okay. Secondly, I think it's problematic that city staff is representing the city council that they are following some kind of formula when they clearly are not. And I'll show you an example of that in your own ordinance language. Please note that right here in the ordinance language, it says that a small trash cart that is picked up every other week has a rate of $19.09. If there's some formula that's being followed, and a small cart is picked up every week instead of every other week, I don't think you need to be a math major to say that that should be twice as much as the other one.
Well, certainly it sounds like he took the same math class as I did. I think I would agree with his calculations. It doesn't seem like it is in proportion to the amount of expenditure that is going into the effort of whether or not you've got trash every other week versus every week.
This reminds me of kids arguing over who's going to get the last piece of pie, and mom or dad has to say, well, we're going to split it. I mean, folks, this isn't a one-time occasion. They've been operating this system for a year plus 2 months.
And here's another thing I want to point out too, is that oftentimes what you hear municipalities say that one of the reasons why they're moving towards single hauler trash collection is because there is this goal of zero waste in the end. That this is a way that it'll be more environmentally friendly, that people will start to throw out less. But you see, if you have that small cart and it costs almost the same to have it picked up every week as it does every other week, there really isn't any incentive to go with every other week and try to have less trash and to try to work towards that goal of zero waste, because it doesn't make any difference in your dollars either way other than a couple of bucks. And for some people, they would say, well, then I don't have to worry about, do I remember, is this the every other week or the other week, So maybe for the $2 difference, it'll save me the hassle of trying to remember where I am in the month and my trash pickup. So let's continue with our next clip as he continues with this line of discussion.
That is not what's happening here. In fact, the people who are paying for the every other week service are subsidizing the rest of the people in the city. There is some random type of adjustment that's being made here that is inconsistent with any mathematical formula.
My point exactly. My point exactly.
But I have to say, that the people who, in this system, as it was marketed in the beginning with the original rates, that the public thought everybody at City Hall and in the trash world agreed on, the people who got the discount were the people that were, putting out the largest container every week, that 96-gallon deal. They were getting a cheaper per gallon rate, a cheaper per unit rate than anybody else. Not in favor of zero waste.
Right.
They're in favor of, we're going to fill up those trash
And
containers.
volume discounts.
They're in favor of volume discounts. There you go.
Big cans, big trash.
Big
volume
trash.
discounts.
Hey, maybe that's why we had these big trash outfits buying out the little fish. What do you think, folks?
Ms. Prince.
This goes back to our original negotiation. I agree. I happen to be somebody who voted against the contract because there was only a $3 difference between every other week and every week. But that was something you guys agreed to. If you're suggesting that we should lower the price of the lowest priced barrel, then maybe I wouldn't have been a no voter. But I cannot believe that you're revisiting that. I've talked to Mr. Revering about it. Why aren't we lowering that? Why are we but that was what you guys agreed on when this contract was negotiated in November of 2017. That is not new information. That is the very basis of the billing that we've been operating under since November of 2017.
So if that is the basis under which they've been operating, then it goes back to what the Trash Consortium's attorney says, that there really isn't any kind of equation behind any of it. They just set some arbitrary numbers there somehow and tried to equate it to some figures someplace. Well, let's continue.
When we approved it. So if you're going back to 2017 to say, wow, this isn't fair, who are you representing here? The haulers, the people of St. Paul? That would have been that was my position in November 2017. I don't understand how this factors into this rate discussion. But it is really interesting for the no voters I represent on the east side that the haulers themselves are saying that the lowest price users of the system are subsidizing the rest of the system.
Amen.
That has been heavily discussed by all of us who haven't agreed with this contract. So this is a really interesting line of questioning of argument that you're presenting here, because you're taking us back 2 full years to the negotiation of the original contract.
Well, that was another little twist that you may not have expected to hear. So here now we have Councilmember Prince talking about that contract that she did not agree with, that she voted no against 2 years ago. But here's the other thing, is that if they're setting rates, that's what they're supposed to be doing at this meeting. Well, what are they doing about changing that policy of the small trash can every other week to every week? Now, let's take a look at our next clip.
Respectfully, Councilwoman Prince, I think that you're missing the point.
That is the second time that you have said to a woman sitting at this table that they don't understand what you're talking about, and I'm running out of patience with that.
Respectfully, Madam Chairwoman, this is not directed at any particular gender or any particular person, although
We're not
Councilwoman Prince is asking the
misunderstanding,
question.
we're asking a question. So just clarify and don't tell us we're misunderstanding. Thank you.
Well, when in doubt, pull out the card, right? No, here's the question, is that you've got the majority of the council members are women, correct, on the St. Paul City Council. Mm-hmm. So it's more likely than not that the majority of the questions or comments are coming from women. So I can see where, if he's making general comments, it wouldn't be necessarily directed towards women because he's just directing it towards the majority of the people that are asking him questions. Looking at our clips, you might say, well, maybe we're being biased towards men because we only showed one male commenting, right? Well, that's because there was only one man commenting, and the rest of them were women. It wasn't that we were picking and choosing.
We were also missing 2 male members. I didn't see Councilman Daitao there. I didn't see Councilman Basari there. And if it comes to the gender, composition of the council, I know because I lost to a good woman, Nelsie Yang, in Ward 6. So get ready to add one more woman. So, Mr. Lawyer for the Haulers, got to pay attention to these things.
To clarify, my point was this. If these rates are being calculated based on a mathematical formula, as been proposed, one should be double the other.
All right,
It's math.
this is highly unusual. I don't understand the approach you're taking. I don't understand what you're doing. I agree with Ms. Prince. We're not renegotiating this contract. We're setting the rates today. So can you please get to the rates specifically and the formula to my other colleagues' point about what piece of this don't we agree with? Let's run out the time and then we'll close the public hearing and hear from folks on the other side. And it does look like you have somebody who would like to also weigh in.
Now, of course, this is the irony of all of this, is just the clip before she indicated to the attorney, don't tell us we don't understand. And yet right after that, after berating him, she then says, I don't understand, I don't understand, I don't understand. So which is it? She can acknowledge that she doesn't understand, but the attorney can't say you don't understand? What is it? I think I don't understand. Mr. Copeland, do you understand?
Yeah,
I think this means that all this misunderstanding and don't understand business, we're going to have to come back and finish this on another program to see if we can come to some resolution in all of this.
So tune in next week for more high drama.
Or The Gremlins, the new novel.
There you
The
go.
Gremlins of City Hall.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Copeland, for being here.
I always enjoy being here with you, Diana.
Yes, and viewers, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Off the Record News. And we'll be back next week with more news. Now, in the meantime, you'll watch the end of our program where we have information on how you can subscribe to our news programs on YouTube. Now, the reason that you want to subscribe to them on YouTube is because it's my understanding that once we post up a new news program, you will be notified of that upload so that you can go and you can watch it at your leisure. Now, of course, not only will you find off-the-record news, but you'll also find local news report and the Citizens Reporter, because we do here 3 news programs a week. So Put Your Hands Together Productions Incorporated is a little local news media organization staffed entirely by volunteers. We go out into the community, we get film footage, and we bring you the news you'll see nowhere else. Bye-bye.